And we are live. A narcissist plays the long game. They plant seeds and systemically break you down. Even early on, I had the feeling I was being tested. Damien had me questioning myself at every turn. It started with mind games and accusations. Looking back, he saw me coming in a mile away. I never chose Damien. He chose me, and I didn't even know it. By the time I gave in, I was hollowed out. I had been filling the void I had within through meaningless sex and attention-seeking relationships. The kind of relationships where the simp hung on my every word. I've learned a valuable lesson. Men give love to get sex, and women give sex to get love. With every encounter, I came up empty, using them like a band aid to cover up the enormous hole I had in my heart. It's no wonder he saw me coming. Damien came packaged nicely. He checked so many of the boxes up until he checked so many of the boxes. Up until Damien, I had dated boys. They were dependent on their parents, worried about friends, and hadn't experienced the world through a man's eyes. Damien was the complete opposite. His conversation was stimulating and well read. I felt like he can speak on any subject and sound knowledgeable. The stage was set. He had prepared a wonderful meal, and his apartment was immaculate. Damien was it, the man I had been searching for. At the moment, I let my guard down. I allowed his I allowed his fingers to massage my shoulders and my back. I've had messages before. I've had massages before, but this was different. His hands lit me up from the tip of my curling toes to the top of my hairline. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an excerpt from a project that I'm working on with my next guest. You are here at the Hope for Romantic M.A.N podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Dropping Dimes, aka the Hope for Romantic, aka the Feminist and Chauvinist Tendencies. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode. Today we start October, and this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. What I just read to you was a small part of a project I'm working on. I'm working on it with a really amazing young lady. She's a model, she's an actress, she's a social media superstar, she's a recording artist, and now she's a writer. I've had the privilege and the honor of meeting with her throughout the last couple of weeks on an artistic level and really getting to know her. And it's one of the few times in my life where the beauty on the outside absolutely is outshined by the beauty on the inside. She's a gentle soul. She's an amazing person. To think that she's overcome the things she's overcome, to think her story has taken the twists and turns that it has taken, and she's still here with a bright smile and happy to be here and happy to share her knowledge and really help the people around her with her story. It's the story of triumph. It's the story of a woman who's risen from the fire. It's a story of a woman that overcame. And I'm very proud and I'm very happy to bring you Jessenia Gallegos. She's, like I said, she's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. Give me a round of applause for Jessenia Gallegos. Jessenia, how are you, man? How's everything?
I am so good. Like, I'm really happy to be able to be on your podcast, and I'm also just very humbled by that introduction. I mean, it was very deep and intimate. The passage that you read from a project we've been working on, and I think in the process of these months that we've been putting in, hours after hours after hours, we've both gotten a really good understanding of each other, and I'm extremely much a fan of yours too. I have your book.
Thank you, thank you.
um, and I think it's an amazing read. I think it's a beautiful guide. And I think it's a great handbook for women too who want to understand men, you know?
Appreciate that.
Um, I think that our discovery in writing my story, I think we both are able to not just cater to women, but even men, anyone who loves love, anyone who wears love on their sleeve, and anyone who needs to discover their self-worth. Because without that, we tolerate and put up with less than what we deserve.
Absolutely. One of the things when we started the project, I remember I had put something out, and it was about a book that I wanted to write, which hopefully I do get to one day. And I remember our mutual friend Jason reached out, and he was
Mm-hmm.
like, "I have a friend. She has a great story. She also wants to write a book. She, she's in the process of that. She's thinking about it, doing it." So he gave me a name. I went down the rabbit hole, looked a couple of things. I was like, "Oh wow, the social media, who you were." I was like, "Yeah, well, it sounds cool." Then when I started talking to you, somewhere in the middle of the night, it just came to me like an epiphany. It was like, "No, that's not the book for her." And I remember reaching out to you and asking you. I was like, "That's the book I want to write. What's the book that's in your heart?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think we took off from there. And it was been very organic because the story is so layered, so nuanced. There's so much there to talk on, and so many aspects, so many approaches to take that I know people are going to benefit from reading this book. First and foremost, just give everybody a little history about you. Where the passion for the arts come from. What's your background? Who are you? Where can they find you? We'll get into that part, but who are you? Give them a little background on who is Jessenia.
You know, it took me a really long time to discover who Jessenia was.
I love that.
I think I was so many things for so many people, right? I was trying to be the perfect daughter. I was trying to be the perfect friend. I was trying to be the perfect student. I was trying to be all these things for everybody. And in the mix, never really happy because I didn't feel like I was being seen, right? Um, it took me a long time to love my name. I used to dread it. Imagine being a brown little girl in a Polak school and everybody's calling you Jessica, Jennifer and everything else other than your name and you feel almost guilty, you feel like a black sheep, right? Um I come from first I'm a firstborn US born citizen from immigrant parents. They came here like many other immigrant families with a dream, the American dream. I don't think my parents ever dreamt that I would be doing what I'm doing right now.
Right.
I think one of the things that my mother always tried to instill in my brain, but God has his destiny and what's yours is yours no matter what timing that is, right? She always would remind me, we didn't come to this country for you to sing around and memorize lines and act in front of the TV, like trying to get that out of my brain. And I see where she was coming from because of the hard work and sacrifice she was putting in being alongside my father, who also left everything behind in Ecuador to try to make something great for his family. Um, I fell in love with art and music and movies and all that because that was like my scapegoat, right? Early on, uh, I felt like I found pieces of myself in this artistry, in these stories, and I always fell in love with the story of the hero, right? Because it's always like the underdog. It's always someone you least expect it to be. And then somehow they're able to prevail. And I remember as a little girl, I always thought that, someday I'll prevail. And I didn't think at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8 when I was being bullied and teased for being extremely overweight with glasses and braces that I would then get bullied for losing the weight and losing the glasses and losing the braces. That was an experience that I never saw coming, especially because in my teens, I lost so many childhood friends that were females, girls that I thought were my sisters. And it wasn't until high school, going to an all-girls school, that I realized how catty women can be and how
Oof.
society makes women compete with each other in ways that make women doubtful and almost vindictive to one another, which is
Wow.
really sad, you know? Uh, and all I ever wanted was just to have something, especially have a sister. I grew up with brothers who are very much older than me. At some given point in my life, I almost felt like I was an only child. You
Yeah, I can see
know?
how it happens. Yeah.
I felt like no one understood me. And it was hard. Like, how can you not understand me? Like, my point of view is valid. You know, I may not be old enough in your eyes, but I'm smart enough to put pieces together, you know?
Right.
And it took me a long time, and it took me a long time to find my voice, and
I
it took
can
me a
see
long
that.
time.
I can see how you are. A lot of even what you do today is in an effort to be heard. You know
Right,
what I mean? Not so much seeing anything like that, but to be heard and not. Let's see, give it deeper. To be, I don't know if I'm using it right. Listen or listen and hearing. Like
right,
I don't. Which is the one that just somebody just you just hear what you have to say. But no,
right,
but you want people to listen. You want
right.
people to go a layer deeper and listen to you, and that's why
Yeah.
you. Okay, that's fantastic. I love that.
I'm
And
I'm
I see a lot of that. I
happy.
feel.
I'm happy
Go
you
ahead.
could see that. I'm happy you could see that mirroring, because a lot of people, when they see influencers, and I can't speak for all of them, but I could speak for myself. A lot of the times, people see influencers or anyone on social media, especially if they have a track mark. Oh, they just want attention. Oh, they just want, followers. I'm actually the opposite to that. You know, my boyfriend can attest to that. That I'm always like, man, if people are gonna follow me, I hope they follow me for a reason.
Right, right.
Not
For the story, for the meat and
right,
potatoes.
not because I look good, or not because I style myself great. I want people to learn that, as a person who suffered a lot internally, and who battled this battle and continues to deal with a lot of
Right.
struggles, that I'm pulling through, and remind people that you're not alone. You know, for me, I'm a huge advocate on mental health and taking care of yourself spiritually as well. And I know for some people it's a strange topic, and for some people it's an uncomfortable topic. But for me, it's worked as a collective to not just focus on the exterior change and the mental change, but my spiritual growth as well. And
Absolutely.
um, and it's crazy that you and I have this working relationship through our mutual friend, and in the process we've developed a nice friendship of knowing
Absolutely.
each other. And um and it's crazy because, to me, when we do have our conversations and you pick out these things, I'm like, you so get me. You so get me. From just a little bit that I got to tell you, you were able to see the grander picture of who I am today. It's not about being seen. It's about, can you listen to what I have to say, because I want to help you. I want to
Right.
help you. That's all it is. That's all it is. And Getting into college was a very interesting phase for me, because I now started a date, and it was crazy because my first relationship, and I never talk about him, and he was such a great guy. I ended it so soon because I just thought that, for some reason, I didn't deserve it. And I found myself, as I got older, in my younger 20s, because of the bullying, because of the battle of not being able to love myself, suffering from various eating disorders, the lack of self-love. I gravitated to people that treated me bad, you know, bad
Wow.
friends,
Yes.
you know, bad employers, bad. And it's crazy because I do come from a loving family. Their love was tough, but I rebelled. Is that interesting? Like,
Yeah.
I rebelled against the people that loved me the most, but I gravitated to the people that hurt me the most. So I think we all go through a learning curve in our lives, and I look back at it, and I'm grateful for my parents never being hard on me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be who I am today. And even though it was cruel at the time of my surviving my domestic violence, which happened in my early 20s, with my mother having a conversation with me a few weeks after, she literally was rubbing my hematoma out my leg from the abuse, and mending me basically back together. Weeks later, for her to say, just stop talking about it and you'll be able to move forward. Forget about the past and you can move forward.
It's so they didn't have. Okay, so I always talk about this, right? And I love that you brought it up. And I do it, and a lot of people tend to be very hard on our parents. What we don't understand, right? Caesar is, I'm gonna put it to you like this. Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says dogs in Mexico don't have food, but they're emotionally balanced. People in
Mm-hmm.
America, I mean, dogs in America are obese, but have no emotional balance, right?
Right, right.
And I had to think about that, and I was like, wow, there's a similarity between our parents and that's in that scenario because it's like they weren't afforded the luxury of depression.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't afforded the luxury of of the opportunity to be in touch with their feelings. Now I'm being I guess it's rhetorical. I don't really mean that
Right,
because obviously it did them damage as well. But what I'm saying is they weren't in the situation. There was layers to it, and survival was first.
right.
Then they could worry about their feelings. Where we're in a situation where we're not really worried about survival, so we could be very in touch with our feelings. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we look at them and we like, you don't understand. And I'm
Right,
positive that they look at us and say, you don't understand. You know what
right,
I'm saying? Like what we've
right.
been through for you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't ever point the finger and blame. But with that said, I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely understand what you're saying and where you're coming from because we've all been there.
Right,
We've all
right.
been there. Where situations where in your mind and your heart you feel they are level 10 catastrophic
Mm-hmm.
and they brush it off like, hey, just you'll get over it.
You
You're
know,
like, what?
and for my family it was, and that's why it was very catastrophic because they almost lost their baby girl,
Right.
you know? But to be so bold to make that statement, I get why my mother said what she said then. At the moment, I didn't. It's because it pained her to relive it.
Right.
You know, she was first, my father and her were first hands there for me after my
Mhm.
relationship with my abusive partner. They were the ones that had to hear before any type of legal matter was even moving forward, these threatening messages that at one given point was scary.
I could
Are they
just
going to,
imagine as a parent not feeling like you could protect your baby.
right, right.
You
Like
know?
it was so much so that I remember one of my brothers who were living with us at the time, you know, he was so fearful for my life that there were cameras installed all over the house and I had to phone in every single time. I had security officers at my job walk me to my car. you
Wow.
know
Yeah.
um it was a lot because they were they got to live through the nightmare just a piece you know
Before you know what that is such a great segue into where I want to go with this conversation.
hmm
Um, there's going to be a lot of people eventually that listen, on the different streaming platforms, and hopefully it gets to somebody's ear who's either going through what we went through, and understands, or is on the process of getting out, or whatever. One of the first things I want to clear up is, and I'm sure we've spoken about this, that you've gotten the question, but how did this happen to you?
hmm
You know,
hmm
you were for so that people understand. Jasenia was probably at the top of her game, or very close to it.
oh yeah, I
You know
was
what I mean?
very
It
up
was
my
modeling.
career.
She had just won a contest on the Tyra Banks show as a
I
top
was
model.
I was being
She was
offered a small role in a major film that we all know today, Southpaw, with Jack
look at
Gyllenhaal.
that. There you go. So
So,
her career was really taking off. She was
hmm
in a really great position. And it's that crazy thing that happens to your life where you're living one of the most amazing times of your life, and behind closed doors in the darkness, you're living a nightmare.
right,
Tell
right.
the people about that. What is that like? Let's start. Do you feel like the way you grew up and the fact that, how about this? I'm gonna lead it with this. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, but I'm just so excited about this conversation. I feel like that when we spoke, a lot of your personality that found you in this situation, you could see traces of it growing up. You were
Right.
always empathetic to your abuser,
I was, and
whether it was being bullied, whether it
hmm
was getting gum put in your hair or whatever. It was almost like you always stopped And you, even though you were going through what you were going through, you would look at these girls and be like, oh, but why? But why? Like you were giving them the benefit of the doubt. So these
Mm-hmm.
traces of you being so sweet and so generous were there. And I find that it kind of got you here to this
It
point where you
it
meet this guy.
definitely. Yeah, no, it definitely. You know, it's a lot. You know, you think about a lot of the times when people are like, "Well, you don't look like the type of person that would get abused." You know, well, being a victim or a survivor doesn't have a color, an age, an economical bracket, a status. It's not prejudiced to anything. It can happen to anybody. You know, even with the circumstance that happened with Johnny Depp, you know, the man became aggressive with his abuser because of his sense of lack of respect and role as a male. Not to say it was okay, but you know, at the end of the day, his tracking rate showed that he never presented these type of traits within him until he was with someone who already had a history of being abusive with her partners, you know?
Yep.
And so for me, I'm an advocate that it doesn't just happen to women. Yeah, it happened to me. And yeah, it happened to a girl with 500,000 followers on Instagram and over, you know, millions and millions collectively on all platforms. But doesn't matter. It can happen to the doctor that's taking care of your broken bone in the ER. It can happen to, you know, your best friend's mother. You know, it can happen to anybody. And for me, I always try to remind people that it could also happen to men too. And, you know, I've dedicated a few episodes about the topic because I feel like there's not enough voices for men to say, hey, I've been victimized by abuse as well. And I use that because I never want it to be a conversation of domestic violence looks like a woman. You
Yes.
know, the victim is a woman. No, the victim could be man or woman. And leading on to my relationship with an abusive person, you know, it's gotten to the point now when I hear this question, well, what made you fall in love with an abuser? That I realize people are just not thinking thoroughly, because when you ask that out loud once more, it sounds silly, right? Like,
Very.
why did you fall in love with an abuser? I don't think anybody falls in love with an abuser, because you're not falling in love with the abuser. You're falling in love with this image that they put
The picture that
in,
they painted.
right. And the picture is so beautiful.
It's in the book we talk about that, and we wrote something to the effect of the devil doesn't come looking like a nightmare. He comes
Right.
looking like your dream.
Right.
And that's exactly how he comes. And he's a shapeshifter. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he becomes your ex-boyfriend stuntman. Everything your
Right.
ex-boyfriend wasn't willing to do, he comes in and he is it, and he
Right.
fills it, and he love bombs you and puts you in a position where you think everything is a bed of roses. And this
Mm-hmm.
is the guy that I've been waiting for my entire life, or
Right.
this is the woman I've been waiting for my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all one big setup.
It's a
See,
setup to trap you.
Jessenia, I have a question for you. Is it
Mm-hmm.
safe to say that you didn't pick your abuser? Your abuser picked you.
It's very safe to say that, and it's eerie because when we were writing the book, we both discovered something that you pointed out, because I remember telling you, like, it's almost as if there was nothing flawed. Our similarities, I even said, I felt I could truly say that he studied my questions that I had with radio interviewers, my
Mhm.
magazines where there were the Q&As. Because even up until like my favorite place to go eat, which was a little hole in the wall, was something that he said he loved going to too. And it's
But
not like it wasn't possible, because we lived, you know, he
within
lived
the
in
same
this,
radius, yeah.
right. So it was like, oh my God, it's like this is fate, you know. And that's the problem with society. I feel that at the time of our upbringing, we saw movies, we heard songs, we
Right.
saw you know, novelas where, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
if you're
The dream was
Latino, we saw
possible.
novela.
He was gonna come
Right,
on the white horse. Yeah, absolutely.
right. And you believe in all these things, and not to say I still believe in a happily ever after. I definitely
Yes.
do. But it's definitely not at the cost of my life and
I think
my
what you
mental
just
health.
said speaks to your emotional growth. That your past experiences aren't aren't what it's supposed to be. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That you're able to look forward and say, no, that was an anomaly. That's not how life is supposed to be. I'm
Right.
worth more than that, and I'm looking forward to more than that. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
speaks to your emotional growth. It speaks to you being able to push past the drama, the hurt, the trauma that you've had to still
Right.
believe in love. So many people would have just completely been jaded by now. But the
Yeah.
fact that you still believe in love speaks to that.
Yeah, like I said, I come from a loving family, regardless of whether it was tough or not. Tough love is love, and I think tough love is probably the greatest love. I think tough love from a family member or a friend that wants to see you succeed and do right by you. Like they want you to do right by you, you know? Um and again, when we're young and our ego is so big, we don't see that. But once we get humbled down, whether we fall face first on the ground and have to pick ourselves back up and start from zero, that happened to me. I tell people, when it comes to being humble, I probably know it very well, from my hard times as a kid struggling with trying to fit in, to losing it all and being at the top of my career, you know, being at the top of my career where
Let's explain to the
I'm
audience what happened.
like I'm worldwide known. I'm not like just, oh, she's from this town and the town knows her. Oh, she's just from, New Jersey and we know her. Like the whole entire world. I was actually in Times Square, and there was some girl that was visiting from some other country, and she recognized me, and that was very humbling to me because it's been a long time since I've been in the presence of an outside country that people could recognize me. But at that time, at the peak of my career, I could be, in Germany or France or in Italy or Russia, and people would know that's Jessenia. That's the girl from, this cover, or that's the girl from that music video, or that's the girl from that billboard. Obviously, that was back in 2013, 12. And of course, a lot has happened between there and then. And one of them was me finally breaking away from that relationship. When my abuser manipulated me to believe he was something he was not, that when the first strike happened, when he first put his hands on me,
Yes.
it was almost
Surreal.
that
It
this
must have
this
been
is
surreal.
this is a nightmare. This ain't real life.
Right.
You know, I'll never forget my mother calling me in the middle of the night, freaking out. I thought someone died because I could hear it in her voice that she had been crying, and she was just, you know, and I was like, "Mom, what's wrong? Like, what happened?" I literally said, "Who died?" And she goes, "No, I just woke up from a nightmare." And what's scary about this is, like,
Oh.
my
Right.
mother, she dreamt of something, and she said, "I dreamt that, he was hitting you." And I was like, "What are you talking?" And at the time, he had never once touched me
Right.
inappropriately. He had never once raised his hand, and we were already moved in together. So I was like, "Mommy, you're just scared because I'm not home."
Mhm.
I was like, "But he would never do that to me."
Isn't it
And
crazy how at that moment you could utter those words and believe him
yeah,
that he would
because
never.
I would have never moved in with him, if I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
that I was going to be living a living hell. So when my mom told me that, I was like, "Mom," I was like, "that's such an outrageous dream." And I remember just thinking, like, that's so crazy for her to even dream. Like, where did she come with that, right? And
Mhm.
then after he hit me the first time, which happened maybe a month later, or maybe more, maybe less later, one of the things that I've registered was like that conversation, right? Like, wow, like my mother foresaw something, and whatever that was at that given time, I didn't know until later on when she told me that my father said that he just felt a little uneased by him after the second meeting.
Mm.
And I was like, "Mommy, these are the type of things you're supposed to tell me, you know, moving forward. Um, but again, I think it took me and my mom a while to be where we are now, especially where we can talk as I guess,
women, right,
not even mother daughter, but as like, you know, even peers in that aspect where
right.
you're my mom and I love you and I'm your daughter and you know I love you, but there's a level of respect when there's that peer, that sense of peer, you know. uh I think it's beautiful when people can have a friendship with their parents, but my parents are so old school sometimes that like
Yeah, yeah.
they're the way we communicate is like they're advising me a lot and I'm advising them, you know.
Right.
And I actually love that dynamic more now because before my mother and I would just bump heads a lot. You know, people always think victims of abuse have, you know, daddy issues. Their father's not around.
Hmm.
You know, my dad was around, and in the book, I explained that, you know, he wasn't perfect, but he was perfect for me. He was perfect.
Right.
He was perfect as my dad.
Yes.
He may not have been perfect at the time as a husband, but he was also young and had to deal with his growing pains and his hard knock part of his story. But he was a great man and a great father to me.
Mm.
And I always wondered, like, does this man even exist? You
Right.
know, does this man exist? Because again, I was finding myself attracting broken men, broken men that
The universe doesn't give you what you want. It gives you a
right.
reflection of who you are.
Right. And it took me so long to see that I was only attracting what was a reflection of me. And I was broken.
Right.
I was broken. And it's nobody's job to fix you. Like it
No,
was I had no business trying to fix any of the people that were in my
absolutely not.
life.
Yeah, absolutely not.
You know, it was my business to use my energy to heal myself, to
Yes.
love myself, to fill that void that couldn't get filled by anybody else. I
Hmm.
remember always overpouring in my relationships
Always overpowing. Yes.
and always feeling drained, you know? And there's one thing being tired because you're running around like a superwoman, but
Right.
then there's a difference between that feeling tired and then being drained. And I
They
think
say
it's
when
very
you're tired, you need sleep.
right.
But it's when it's your soul that's tired, sleep can't help you.
Sleep will not help you. So for me, that relationship with my abuser, you know, there's so many complexities to that, you know,
Let's let's
beside
let's let's dive in. Let's dive in.
right,
I want
right.
to. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Let's talk about. I'm gonna bring you to some dark places. I know. I know. We talked about it in advance. Um, because I think one of the questions a lot of people have that don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because I find there's a lot of people that just don't know this world, and when they see somebody get their hands put on them, they just assume I'm gonna leave. Or why didn't she just walk out the door? Why didn't she just leave? What happened? And in the book, we talk about how you put him first at many times. But talk about one of the times when you tried to leave,
You
just so that people
know,
have an understanding of that it wasn't just the one, two, three easy
right.
thing to do.
You know, statistics show that women it takes 8 attempts before a woman actually gets to leave their abuser.
Wow,
And some of these women stay because they're conflicted because they don't
we lost it for a second. It's okay. So you hear that 8 times.
oh, hold on.
It's okay.
Uh,
8 times before a woman can leave her abuser.
okay, yeah, it
That is
takes about eight
insane.
times to leave their abuser. And a lot of the reasons that the women can't or feel that they can't is because the man is the sole provider economically. They have no place to run. A lot of the times these men have taken these women and men, these partners rather, have taken their victims so far away from their family and their friends that
From their
there's no
power base.
connections.
From their
Right,
power base, absolutely.
right. You know, and sometimes people that get involved no longer want to get involved because they're tired of the helping you and you going back. You know,
Yes.
it even in the system for the policing, it's also very disheartening. You know, it's not that they're assholes. I think so many times cops come to these reoccurring calls and they're like, oh, it's that same, you know, couple that are
She's
just
just gonna
fighting.
defend them when we get there.
Right, right. Like it's there you know that we're gonna arrest him and she's gonna bail him out and then and it's sad how it not every domestic violence situation is identical. yes, that might
Right.
be the majority, but it's sad that it can jade and dishearten friends, family, even our police system. Um,
Yeah.
but for me, I didn't even think of leaving him the first time. I was actually talked to by his sibling. Hey, listen, you're a great woman. I know how my brother is, and it's going to get really crazy if it hasn't already. I can see how he's treating you. I feel like you're not safe. You know, I know that it can only get worse. You know, whatever he's doing now, because of course I tried covering it up, and she's like, he's done it in the past, you know, and it was crazy because it's almost like I didn't process those things, right? But it was like, hey, I want to help you get out. And it was in that moment she was helping me get my things into her car that he saw. He was coming home and he saw it and ran out, and he got so hysterical. And I remember the first thing was like, he's gonna come at me. I'm gonna get, you know,
Right.
I never imagined that he would put his hands on his sister.
Right. So he was abusive across the board. It didn't matter. It was the opposite sex, a woman. He was going to be.
When he snapped, and there was no control of
We have
that.
a quick comment. Janine says, seeing your friends going back after you help them so many times is exhausting and even more so hard to watch.
It
I
is.
agree. It is. It's tough. It's one of those things where you get frustrated, but no. How about this? Understanding that it takes an average of 8 times. I'm hoping that information, that little jewel right there, um, is put out and people absorb that, because you also got to look at how many different types of connections the people have to this man. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Sometimes when there's children involved, it's the easy thing to say is, "Oh, just
Mm-hmm.
leave. It'd be even better for the kids." Da, da, da. But that's how you feed them. That's how you take care of them. That's how you clothe them. That's their home base. That's where they feel comfortable. And now all
Right.
of a sudden you're gonna have to snatch them out of that. That's a
Right.
decision. That's one major decision you have to make. Um,
Right.
whether it's there's just so many different forms of attachment that you have that I can see why it would take financial attachment. You have
For
a
me, it was
financial attachment.
fear. For me, it was fear.
Yeah, talk about that. Yes, fear.
The attachment to him was, as long as I stay with him, no one else that I love will get hurt.
Wow.
You know, there was a moment in the book that we talk about it, and I don't want to give it all away because, you know, there's so much to it, but it got to the point where he even threatened to hurt my pet, you know,
Oh, hell
and
no.
to see him, he made sure that I knew that he could. And when you see these things, now you're programmed to to live in fear, because if you leave, someone or something you love is bound to get hurt. And the threats that he made towards my family, especially, who are the reason why I do what I do, you know. I go hard for them. I work. I've worked so hard to even rebuild everything that I lost today for them, you know? And I do it for the sake of speaking my story for anyone who may be in the dark today, to show them that life is better. And as scary as it can be, I will tell you that this man will never come. My abuser never had the balls to fight another man. And I discovered that as the relationship
How
unraveled.
often we discover that, right? That the reality is that they're cowards.
Right, right. You're brave enough to beat a woman, but you can't stand up towards a man that's coming at you. Um, and for me, when that happened and I saw that he could hurt his own family member, I for sure believed he could hurt mine. And at the time, I just was too afraid to leave. And there were many attempts that I even told you a story with our last conversation, that when my friend got involved and took me to the police station, and they took photos of my body, because the night before he beat me with his belt, you know. So
Okay, she's on pause
and
for a little
small
bit.
fractures. um hmm?
No, you had frozen for a little bit. All right, go ahead.
oh
Small
you know, my
fractures.
friend came. Yes, they saw lacerations, cuts, bruises, and I had small fractures caused by this belt and this belt buckle. you know, the belt buckle was a big belt buckle. With these photos and everything in hand, there was a temporary restraining order that was in the system, and it wasn't until the day that we went to court that I felt bad for him. It was almost like here was my state of being free, right? Freed from him completely.
Right.
But it took me back from the first night when he put his hands and he was crying for begging me to forgive him. And
Let's
I was
go there. No,
and I
let's
was
go there.
and I was consoling him.
Let's go
So
there.
I was consoling him the first time he beat the life out of me because I was
Do
about
you
to
mind
walk away.
if I read a small passage from that?
Yeah, yeah.
Just to kind of give everybody an idea of where we're at. Yeah, I definitely want. But while I do that, let me read some comments. Miriam
Right.
says, I fully understand because that's exactly what I felt in my past relationships with my ex narcissist. Janine says, you end up being the bad guy when they involve you in the situation.
Right.
I never give up on trying to save my friends from these situations, but they have to be ready to walk away and fight on their own for their own lives. I've seen this happen to many women and even a few men that I love. It's a tough situation, and only they know how bad it is and when it's time to walk away. That is so true, Janine. You hit it right on the head.
She hit it right on the head. While you
Yeah,
look for that, I want to touch base on what
yeah,
Janine
absolutely.
said. You know, it's it is, you said something that I'm a huge strong advocate about. When I tell my stories about anything I've been through with the hardships, especially with my abuser, I don't want people to get lost by him as the villain, right? Because also take accountability of the role I didn't play for myself. I should have been strong
I'm
enough.
glad you made that clear because somebody might listen to that. The role that you played for yourself,
Right,
not in the
right,
situation, for yourself.
right.
Go ahead.
And I've said it a few times in my podcast, in my own scriptures that I write in my captions on my feed. It's never about pointing the blame on this person, right? It's about what lesson did I learn from it and what can I share for my growth. And for me, I was not looking out for myself enough. You know, I wasn't strong enough to not come back. For some reason, I came back one, two,
Right.
three, four, too many times. And it wasn't until the last time we were together where I almost lost my life that I
That's going to
remember.
be such a powerful, powerful part of the book. I can't wait till we're able to put more out and for people to really dive in because that's going to be such a powerful message that you send in that part of the book. Go ahead.
Right. When you know, I won't go into full detail, but I will tell you that one of the things that I remember when I was running away from him and I was running away for my dear life, I kept replaying over and over some of the words that his sister told me, some of the words that I heard here and there from people in the grapevine, and especially from that day in court when I dropped the temporary restraining order and the police officer looked at me and my mom and my dad and said, "Are you sure you want to drop what he did to you with the belt buckle and the all these things? He's going to kill you one day." And I remember running away so hard and running as fast. I'm not a runner, I'm a lifter, you know.
Yeah.
But I was running so fast that by the time like I found sanctuary at a gas station, I legit fainted because like I literally, like, your
Yeah, it
adrenaline
took everything
just,
out of you.
right, it took everything out of me. And in that moment, I just kept thinking like, if I don't run fast enough, he's going to catch up to me and for
It's
sure
gonna
kill
kill me.
me.
Right.
And you know,
I don't think
I
enough people understand what that feeling in that second feels like.
right.
When you're running and you're literally making a life and death decision at that moment. It's not a matter of I get away and it's all fun and games. No,
Yeah.
she was literally fighting for her life in that moment from an attacker that said he didn't care if she lived or died as long as
Yeah.
nobody else could have her.
And you know, that night when I realized that I was safe and I realized that I you know, he wasn't around, I was very I then got worried for him. Is he okay?
It's
You
exactly how it
know,
works. It's a cycle.
is
That's
he
the
okay?
cycle.
You know, because I remember jumping out of a moving car
Yeah.
because he was strangling me. And here I was, after I was okay, I wanted to make sure he was okay. And it wasn't until the police officers came to take pictures and, question me and all this other stuff, that I was informed that he was being taken to jail. And I
Hmm.
was like, but I didn't press charges. And the whole conversation led to him having assaulted an officer, and
There
that
you
was why
go.
he was going to jail.
Look at
And
that.
in some way, like, and of course I cried and I begged and I said, please let him go. It was just an argument, da da da. Because I never wanted for him or anybody that you care about to get into trouble, you know? And maybe that's the empath in me, maybe that's the over, loving person in me, but at the end of the day, God had his way in saving me from not having that baby with him, in
Right. That's
saving me
another. That's
it
another. You're just touching on little dimes that we're going to touch on in the
right.
book. Let me read
Yeah.
this passage for you so that the audience just gets a little idea of what we're talking about. Um, so just to set this up, it's the part of the book when people ask her, "Why did you stay? Like, how come?" And they don't understand. And the information that she gave when she tells that story is so powerful. It goes as follows: It's so hard to explain why I stayed. Even now, when I retrace my steps, I get lost in that maze. It always starts with the sex, but it was deeper than that. Dee had tapped into my insecurities. I had worked my whole life to bury. I mistook my emotions for a deep love, but now looking back, I see one important piece was missing. Jessenia had failed to love herself. Everything was made about Dee. His comfort, happiness, sexual satisfaction were primary. My feelings were always on the back burner. Uh, the sex started. The sex never slowed down, but definitely put a little less effort in making me happy. It was our first official day living together. Damien had gone out to get some things. He had gone out to get some things from the storage. I thought it would be it would be a cute idea to make sure the house was clean and everything was perfect when he got home. It was all planned out in my head. Dee would walk in, compliment my homemaking skills, grab me by my neck, and make furious love to me, blessing every inch of our new home. Boy, was I wrong. That is not what happened at all. The tension started as soon as he walked in the door. I reached in for a kiss, to kiss him hello, and he brushed past me. He made a straight line to a bag of garbage I had set aside to throw out. For a second, everything was calm, but the rumbling gradually increased. Before I could react, I felt a hand grab the back of my head, pulling me by the hair. It took me a second to realize what had happened. Dee had me face down like a puppy, being scolded, looking at his mess. I had a hard time making out what he was saying, but in between the curse words, I could hear words like discipline and not keeping, and and he kept asking me why I wanted to upset him. Dee finally let go, and I fell to the ground. I looked up, ready to go off on him. Before I could react, the kick followed with a punch. I kept rumbling around like socks in the dryer. When I finally stopped, I remember looking into his eyes and not recognizing the person I saw. He was gone. His eyes were soulless and cold. His grip was so tight I could feel the skin on my arms rip from the pressure. I had no fight left. The wind had been knocked out of me, and I closed my eyes and began to pray for the storm to pass. When the storm passed, I felt his grip loosen up and started to hear a whimper. It was Damien. He was on the he was on the floor in the fetal position, crying. It took me a second, but as I listened, I could hear him begging me for forgiveness and saying I'm sorry. I don't know what triggered me to respond the way I did, because in a split second, I had forgotten what I just went through. I remember worrying about Dee and feeling his pain. I rushed over to him and help him like a baby, helped him like a baby. I kept telling him it's going to be okay. When things calmed down, he approached me, and this would never happen again. That he would work on himself and not let me not make this not make him that he would work on himself and not let me make him mad anymore. Even in his apology, he made sure to point out how I made him upset. Had I just acted right, he wouldn't be in this situation. And I'm telling you, when you were telling me what was going on, and I heard that, and because initially you have that feeling, you're like, but why? But why did she stay? and you made it so you were so clear and so powerful on why. You
Right.
sat there and you heard that whimper and you heard that noise. It was almost like that mama bear, that nurture came out of you, like, and you forgot about yourself. And it's like,
Right.
oh, that's powerful, man.
Yeah, and just to add more to that picture, I'm barely 5'1", and this person was over 6 foot tall, close
Yeah.
to 6'2", and you're talking about a man that, you know, sparred with boxers, and a girl who's never been in a fight, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and at the time I was smaller. I didn't my body transformed a lot in my life, but the pivotal point of where been from then and now was after that breakup. After that breakup, I realized I needed to be strong. Like
Mm.
physically, I needed to
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
strong. Like if I ever got attacked by somebody, what do I do now? I remember taking boxing classes here and there, like just very briefly, like nothing nuts. Like it's not like it's muscle memory, just blah 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 blah. But taking self defense classes because I realized that there was no way that I could even try to fight back, even if I wanted to try to fight back, because I'm weaker than you, I'm smaller than you, and if I try to provoke you,
It'll
I'm
make it
done.
worse. Right.
I'm done. So I knew that whenever I got hit, kicked, punched, spat at, it was like protect the face and like crawl into something, whether it was on the floor or against something on the chair, just so that I didn't get much broken. But there were things that I had no control of. I mean, some of my injuries that I have is I have a fractured orbital eye socket that
Mhm.
led with a hairline fracture on my cheek
Yeah.
and to my nose. And I had, a bruised rib, a hairline fracture on a couple of other ribs. I deal with a lot of chronic pain today because of those injuries that I survived. You
Right.
know, presently, I'm in the process of on my second egg retrieval. And I'm currently on my medications, and I'm tomorrow, I'm due to another
Another session.
clinical
Right.
visit. But I'm dealing with the struggles of the things that I survived from him, even to this day. You know,
If you
uh,
want to touch on it, if you want to touch on it to explain the egg
yeah,
retrieval part, there's a
right.
lot of trauma involved with. Go ahead.
Right. So, it was known that I was pregnant. He announced it to the world. And I won't go into my feelings because they were very conflicted at the time. I talk about it in the book, and I'm
Absolutely.
pretty sure people will
It's eye
understand.
opening. I mean,
Um,
eye opening.
but when
Absolutely.
I miscarried, it I felt both that it was a blessing, you know. As time went by in my life, I sometimes wondered if having had the baby would have been better for me because I wouldn't have dealt with the complications that came after. My major complication with that miscarriage was if I didn't have a baby, then what happened would be the question people would then ask. And he wasn't dumb. He was very smart and calculated, and he really tried to get me pregnant again. And women will know I was a young woman that didn't know much about what I know now, you
Right.
know. But women who have had kids or know about women that have had kids and all that other stuff know that if you suffer miscarriage, especially how far along I was, you need to see your doctor. You need to see your gynecologist, your physician, your OGYN, whatever, whoever it is that's seeing you during your maternity, and you get a DNC. And a DNC is a surgical procedure. What they do is they make sure that the lining of your uterus and everything else is clear from anything that your body can't dispose of.
Right.
Because now you're talking about there's a living thing that no longer is living in there. And there's so much your body can do to process it out, you know? It needs a little bit of help. And that help is the surgery or medication. I had none of those. And for me, instead of having sought the right care that I needed, there was this person who overly aggressively forced himself repetitively, day in and day out, in attempts of getting me pregnant. And it wasn't a 1, 2, 3, 4 time attempt. You're talking about this guy was popping Viagra, to get
Mm.
himself to the point where he could, get to. And it would be 7, 8 times a day. I remember stop like no longer counting after 6. And it hurt. Every single time hurt. There was no sense of arousal for me, because here's a man that you put your hands on me, now I'm not turned on by you, so it's going to be hard for me
Right,
to get,
literally dries your pussy up.
right. Now you're forcing yourself on me, and now it's raw, it's sore, it's inflamed.
Yeah,
um
nothing sexy
and
about it. I
and I
get it.
couldn't and I couldn't get pregnant. So once I couldn't get pregnant, it was a lot of guilting me. You're not pregnant because you're not fit to be, a mother, or you're not pregnant because you're not woman enough, and you can't get pregnant because of.
Oh, it's so
and
miserable.
and and I'm not gonna lie, like those things sometimes register with me. It's triggering, right? Like right now,
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
what I'm doing now at the age of 38 versus what I suffered with him in my early 20s. You would think so much time went by, but certain things can trigger the past, and to not.
It's okay. It's okay. Look, let me tell you something. I am so proud of you that you could even come on here and even give a third of the story that you give. Just you give so much of yourself in an attempt to help the people around you. Um, let me tell you something. Let's go to the comments, because even in the comments, it's the trauma bond as well. Amir says that play a huge part in why we stayed together longer than we should have. Janice says, as crazy as it sounds, so many women stay in the hope of changing a man, or that their love is strong enough to stop him from physically and emotionally abusing you. Also, some women think bringing a life into this type of relationship will make him change. It doesn't. You can't change him. Only he can change himself. A narcissist will have you thinking it's your fault. You made me do this. Nothing should ever make anyone feel. Nothing a narcissist make you do. Nothing should make anyone do these things to another human being ever. It becomes you. It becomes you, the victim, trying to save the abuser, because they convince you they're the victim in all of it. Master manipulation. Absolutely, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
you've been through so much, but you know what? I think we've given the audience enough taste of what's going to be in the book, and a large part of what you've been through. Now, I think we want to pivot, and what we want to do is let's pivot out of that dark place, and let's bring you back into the light.
Yeah. What I
Let's
what
talk
I
about some of the work that you've put in to Jessenia, some of the growth, some of the what are some of the things that you've done to really combat these dark feelings that can come over you at times? Because a lot of women are going to listen to this eventually, especially through those streaming networks, and they're going to hear you, and they're going to take inspiration on the strength you've shown on the back end of this. So I want you to give them that part of it. let's let's
Yeah.
let's talk about that. What have you done? What's helped you? I know art has played a huge role in your life, expressing yourself, helping people, going to talk shows, talking on panels. Go ahead, I'll leave it to you.
You know, um, it's hard because, like, where I am present day, people think that with the work, it all just goes away, right?
Right.
Um, and people think being strong is a choice. It's
Mm,
it's it's also more work, right?
right.
And sometimes being strong is the only choice we do have, you know?
Hmm.
Um, for me, and in this book, when I touch upon my life, we do get to a happy part.
Right.
That's the transition of my most recent heartbreak and
Right.
heartache. Um, it was in the pandemic, the world was to shit and people were dying and it was a scary time. And I had so much time. You know, I've always been everything to everybody else but myself, right?
Wow, that's powerful.
I've
Yeah.
always been everything they've needed and they've wanted and they desired, but I wasn't that for me. And now that I didn't have any distractions or anywhere to go or any projects to fix
Hmm.
or get involved in,
You had to look at the person in the mirror.
I became
The project.
my project.
Right.
I became forced to look at myself and unveil my mask and deal with that pain that was hiding behind the smile, you know, to deal with the person who was suffering behind this image that I put so much work in to having people believe that I was just happy even after having gone through all the shit I went through.
Yeah.
But really I wasn't happy because I was still dealing with so much pain. I put a band-aid on a
And emotions,
shotgun.
and emotions that needed
Right.
stitches.
You
Absolutely.
know, my wound was so it needed surgery.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And 2020, as scary and as painful as it was, I found so much grace and so much healing in it, you know. As involved as my parents are in my life, it was the first time, you know, I didn't get to hug or kiss my mom or get my dad's blessing because we were all locked, you know, in lockdown. And I had to be forced to be by myself and I had to figure things out and I had to do the work. And part of the work was me taking accountability for myself finally. I picked up the phone and I called my insurance and I said, I need to talk to someone ASAP.
That is such a
I,
brave step. Yeah,
I,
Robert, he says, I feel that totally on so many levels. Don't we all? Rob, don't we all, man? Isn't that something that not just a woman hearing this story, but the way she's approaching this, the way she's talking about it, it resonates with men and women, man. We've all had
yeah,
that time where we had to sit and look in the mirror and really be honest with ourselves and make an honest assessment of who we are, where we are emotionally. Go ahead. I really want to keep hearing what you have to say.
no, absolutely. And, you know, I took full accountability in making sure that I was safe. I know my previous patterns as a child for my outcries for help. And that was, you know, either me cutting or me just trying to just end it all, you know? And one of the first people I called after I got off the phone was my brother. And I told him, I need you to check up on me. I told
Sometimes the
him,
strong people
"Mm,
need to be asked if they're okay too.
yeah,
It's always the people that put the smile on, that are in the good time, are happy. I don't know if people really understand this, man. Yeah, I guess we can call it the depression, the what you were going through. Sometimes it comes packed in a smile. Sometimes it comes packed as the life of the party, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're happy inside. Sometimes all that, like you said, is a band-aid. And
mm-hmm,
it's very important for you to. I'm a huge, and my man Robert could attest to it. I'll call my friends at random. Yo, you good? Hey, yo, man, you good? How's everything? You all right? Because I know that feeling. I know the feeling. I'm that guy. I'm the one that's, yo, everything's cool, man. Everything's amazing. Everything's dope. And I have my
yeah,
moments. So I could just
yeah.
imagine what you go through.
Yeah, you know, I'm actually, you know, it's good to have friends like you that do that for their friends. I have two really good friends that will literally like and you're talking about anywhere from 12 to 15 years plus of friendship. So it's not
Right,
like,
right.
you know, like they know me, like they know me and sometimes like they'll literally check up on me and like, are you okay?
And
You
even when you
know,
try to cover up a little bit, they're able to see through it. You know what I'm saying? I like
right. And
that.
I'm like, what are you talking, you know, like, but yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's beautiful to have friends like that in life and those
Mhm.
people to have around you. And I also do the same. You know, there are people in my life that I reach out to see if they're fine. I think it's important for us as individuals to, of course, look out for ourselves, but also check up on the people we love. There's no greater good other than paying it forward, right?
Absolutely.
uh Especially when someone or something has helped you grow, feel better. I think always paying it forward in that way.
Hmm.
You know, for me, when I got off the phone with my brother, I made sure that I literally gathered every sharp object that could potentially be used to cut myself,
Hmm.
every pill that I could possibly drink and take, every poisonous liquid form, and discard from it, you know, and get rid of it. Actually, I had a bunch of plastic utensils for the most part and paper plates, um,
Yeah.
because I needed to love myself enough to stay in this world longer. Um, and I know that when I survived my abuser, I kind of had a guilt syndrome for a while.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't I die? Why am I alive?
Yeah.
And at the time,
Well, let me tell you something. I don't because I really don't want you to sink deeper into, because that question right there, I think even in the short interview that we're doing is being answered.
well, I find it now. I
Yeah,
found it.
because
I found it. I found it working through healers and therapists. I found the answer to that question that I didn't know in my early 20s, and I find that there's purpose to me being alive. and
absolutely,
um and the
there's power in that.
discovery of it, and it's an ongoing, and I don't want people to ever feel that happiness just happens. Happiness takes work, just like everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You want to lose those pounds and you want to keep them off, you got to keep dedicated and disciplined. And there are going to be some good days and there's going to be some bad days, and there's going to be days where you just don't want to do shit.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that's okay.
I have a lot of those.
um it's knowing yourself, and it's being honest with yourself, and having these conversations of love with yourself sometimes. But I do believe that it is our responsibility to be responsible of ourselves.
Absolutely.
And this is why I always say it with love, because I know that it could be taken completely left field. Like, oh wait, that's like so insensitive to tell somebody that they need to be accountable of their action. Well, listen, I almost died because of my lack of self-love and accountability.
Your self-preservation, right? Not putting yourself
Right,
first, not putting your
right,
safety and your security ahead of
right,
somebody else's feelings sometimes. Right, I
right.
get it.
And if there's anything that I ever want, I started something um towards the end of 2020, and it was a You Love You brand. Um, and the You Love You is a self-love movement.
What's the
And it
website for that?
um well, the Instagram handle is youloveyou.brand. And it is a lot. It is a lot of work to have a couple of hats, but I definitely want to, as my life begins to be more stable with my main source of income that I do have, thank God, for it. It's allowed me to open around and dive into, music. For me, music isn't about fame. For me, music, it's an outlet
It's cathartic. Absolutely.
to it's therapeutic, you
Yep.
know to be able to write my feelings and thoughts and create and put it into song, you know
That's how I feel
um
about writing.
right,
Absolutely.
right, and then to hear people reference a line from my song, or tell me why they love one song and this other song, and to know that people, it's a vibration that's put into the world that helps people.
Give me your favorite single, and I'm going to drop the link in the what do you call it?
It's so interesting because my EP Phoenix is about my prior relationships, and each song is about a specific person that I was in a relationship with. The end song, which ended up, at first it wasn't going to be the title of the EP. The title of the EP was going to be completely different. It was going to be called um, Years of Tears. But I ended up changing it when I actually heard Phoenix, and I said, no, 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 no. I'm not going to embrace the years of tears, because the tears are going to stop at this point. They're going to be happy tears. They're going to be
Mm-hmm.
joyful tears. I said it's going to be Phoenix. And when I hear the song over and over again, that song was pretty much encompasses all of my relationships and everything I even been through as a kid too, where I rise through the ashes and I was born again like a phoenix. There's a line in it that says, I've been broken too many times. They burned my ego and they burned my pride. They made me question, should I be alive? But from the ashes, I will rise like a phoenix. In that very small hook, I talk about, being broken and being bruised and being abused, and also questioning whether or not I should be alive, you know? Um, and I realized that I deserve to be here. I'm here for a reason. Um,
Absolutely.
Not many women and men get to be alive from even themselves. And I'm talking about suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm happy to be given the platform that I have. I'm happy to be here. Um, I've found many reasons why I should be here. Um, my niece, who I love and adore, my mother and father, who I love and adore.
This
You know,
message, this message is one of the major reasons you're here. Because let me tell you something. Just in the comments, I've got 3 text messages in the time we've been talking. I'm like, who is this girl? My God, I want to cry. Like, why is she crying? Like, just asking me, and they all feel the same way. It's like your message is so powerful on so many levels, and it resonates with so many people. Let me tell you something. If you leave the earth tomorrow, you left a mark. You've left a huge mark in people's lives where they're looking at you and they're watching you and they're saying, "She did it. I could do it. She did it. She's giving me the blueprint on how to get out, on how to survive, on what life looks like on the other side." You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because that's the other thing. Sometimes that tunnel, they don't see that light.
right,
That tunnel is dark. They don't see the light. And when they talk and they hear you express yourself, and they hear about where you are today and the Phoenix and the music and the things that you're doing with your life. They're like, oh, there's another side to this. There's
right,
another side to this. I'm gonna be okay. You know?
yeah, yeah. And Phoenix is one of my favorite songs. I have a few more. Ammo's about coming out of an abusive relationship. It's not literal. There's a lot of figurative words. But when you get to know my story and you hear the song, you know what it means for sure. Ammo, Phoenix, and on to happier music. I'm working on a few different songs that are in the process of being finished uh, with a few people. Shout out to Chris Cash, an amazing. He's Mark Anthony's guitarist. He just came back from
That's
Mark
awesome.
Anthony's world tour. There's this book that you and I have been diving on that has been very therapeutic as well.
Yeah,
I won't disclose the name of it yet
yeah,
because
yeah.
we have it. I
Was it
just don't.
proprietary reasons?
um, but I'm also working on an independent film, and I'm able to pick up where my abuser wanted me gone. He thought that if I couldn't be with him, then by deleting my social medias, by changing my passwords and access to my accounts, by being unreachable by Hollywood, that he would stop my momentum. And instead, what he did was maybe he saved me from getting lost in all that.
Right.
I don't think God makes mistakes. I think everything happens for its reasons.
The universe doesn't
And
know late; it only knows right on time.
right. And
Absolutely.
there's got to be a reason that this monster came into my life and I went through what I went through, because I could have easily fallen into a path that a lot of Hollywood starlets fall into, especially with my depression, right?
Right,
Especially
right,
with
right.
that.
where you were in your life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think about the blessings in that. I think about all the work that I've been able to put in and do. And I speak of 2020 because it was definitely very life-changing, but prior to that, I did start, my journey of healing as best as I could in a chaotic, busy world. It took the world having to be on pause and on
Hmm.
silent to be able to just really go gun ho on this. And there's a lot of people in my shoes who may have not been in an abusive relationship or anything like that who talk about being woke during 2020 because they did the work. And then some people sadly were still covered with these blind shutters that kept them from seeing things, but it's
Hmm.
never too late. It's never too late. And one thing, like I said, I learned, I'm not here to save anybody that don't want saving.
Hmm.
Whoever goes and gets the book gets it because they want to dive into something deep
That
and
first
and
step,
and
yes,
and and learn something valuable.
absolutely.
Whether it's a person that whoever listens to my music, whoever goes watches my film, I'm not there going to force you. You're going to want to have to do it because ain't nobody going to do it better for you than you.
Then you, absolutely.
And that's something I've learned along the way as well. So, I appreciate the people that see my story, who have gotten to know me on a deeper level, and that have allowed me to create these pieces of work. I thank God, you know, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to get these eggs retrieved and frozen to secure my future. You know, um, I there's just so much more to share.
So let's do this. We're gonna start wrapping up. All right. First and foremost, for those of you, just to let you know, Jessenia is a social media star. She's a social media darling. Her Instagram is 500,000 plus. She puts up amazing content daily. Fantastic, funny, intuitive, smart, educational. It's a lot. It goes the whole range. Her TikTok is popping. It's amazing. I love it. I'm a big fan of it. Um, she has a Facebook page. Go ahead. Let her know where to find you. Just drop it where to find you.
Yeah, I mean, you could find me on, TikTok, Instagram. I am Jessenia. Um,
I put it in the bio. I put it in the.
yeah, yeah. I do have a Twitter. I feel like my Twitter has been my life journal.
Yeah,
There are times that I just go on these like deep like rants, but they're good. And I feel like for me, my Twitter is my journal. I get to like we all
right,
need a journal somewhere and somehow. And for
for
me,
sure.
I'm a strong believer in putting energy out, you know, and into the world and get it out of your system. And then hopefully just ta, you know. Um, but my YouTube is I am
Excuse
Jessenia.
me. Yeah,
Bless you.
thank you.
And the same thing. So yeah, all you gotta do is just I am Jessenia and you'll know it's me when it's verified. There are a few fake accounts, but the one that's got the verification, that's me.
There you go. Um, so we've only scratched the surface. There's so many layers to Jasenia. I've had the privilege of working with her now going on a couple of months, and it's you learn something new. There's always a layer. Um, like I said it when I introduced her, too often you go on social media or you meet somebody that's from social media, and yeah, they're beautiful on the outside, and then you're like, yeah, they leave a lot to be desired as far as the inside. It's not very often that you meet a woman that, as beautiful as she is on the outside, it just pales in comparison to the person she has inside. She's absolutely amazing. I've fallen in love with her as a friend, as a creator, but I will continue to work with her. She's fantastic. Her story is amazing, and I'm super excited. And I'm sure after people reading the book and after people look, taking a little dive into what she, who she is, are going to be very excited of what she has to come because, like I said, she's only scratched the surface. There's a lot left. I'm going to give you some parting words, and then we're going to close the show.
Thank you.
Go ahead. You can say whatever you want. It's your
Well,
last.
I want to thank you for allowing me to talk about this. It being October, it gets overlooked. Domestic Violence Awareness Month, with Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother died because of breast cancer, so I talk about breast cancer awareness too. So I talk about two things on the same month. But for
Right,
me,
yeah.
For me, domestic violence awareness is every day. Whenever I get to talk to somebody, I think this is an important episode for people to listen to and share if you know anybody. There is a hotline out there for people that are currently
I dropped the page down below, and I also put the national phone number down in the comments.
Beautiful. It's it's okay to be afraid, but there's so much strength that comes in breaking the silence. And that strength only gets stronger with time. I know that it's scary in the beginning, and I know that you can't see life any different. But believe me, I am a living testament that there is life on the other side. That light is beautiful, and you get to figure out where it's going to lead you to. And that being said, don't stop loving yourself. And if at any given point you did,
Amen.
and if at any given point you did, just put in that work like any relationship, right? In order for a
Yeah,
relationship to succeed, you got to put in work. It takes
you got to
two
put in the
people
work.
in
And
this
then no more important
situation.
relationship than the one you have with yourself.
Right. And in this situation, it's work too. So just, I always reference Rihanna. Work, work, work,
Right,
work.
right.
I love you
Absolutely.
all. I love you all. And I give you all just big hugs and so much love and light to you.
Awesome, man. You see, I guess I can tell you guys can see what I see, man. She's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining me tonight on the Hope for Romantic M.A.N. podcast. I'm your host, Dropping Dimes, aka the Hope for Romantic, aka the feminist with chauvinist tendencies. They say the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you on behalf of me, on behalf of I and Jessenia. I want to thank you for walking in our why. Have a good one, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.